So while trying to wind up the season, we found ourselves short of an episode. Patrick, in his infinite wisdom, had an idea. A glorious idea. A gleeful and glorious grand idea. In the past, we reviewed some of the newer Trek shows that they've come out. Today, we're going to go as retro as we can, reviewing the first pilot of the original series at a time before Kirk and before Pike got Anson Mount hair. So join us to see as we take off the TOS colored glasses and look at the cage. This is Treknicity.
Welcome to Treknicity, a Star Trek podcast, where we do the deep dive on all things Star Trek. I'm your host, Patrick Murray. With me are my co-hosts, Mike Raper and Lars DeSenza, who I'm sure are trying to hold it in and not crack up too much when I do sexy voice.
I'm trying to hold in the vomit.
Yeah,
The
I think he
Yes.
threw it in his mouth a little bit.
That's the whole idea. In this episode, we're going to review the very first episode of Star Trek ever filmed in its mostly original form, and that being the original pilot, The Cage. We'll talk about what it got right in light of a half a century of Gene's vision and how it also sometimes doesn't quite live up to that. And since it's literally where Trek begins, we're probably going to get a little into the history on how we got to the show. And normally when we're reviewing anything, we usually add a spoiler alert, but I think this episode's older than all of us.
Yes.
So yeah,
Mhm.
we're not going to spoil anything. It's not a spoiler at this point when we tell you what happens. So what do we know about how this whole episode, how we got to from Gene Roddenberry pitching shows to, hey, here's my space, here's my what is it? The
Wagon
train
train to the stars. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if memory serves me correctly, Gene wrote this in like very early 1960s, like 62, 63.
Mhm.
And he was working for the LAPD at the time, working nights for the Los Angeles Police Department, and uh, that was after being a pilot during World War II. Like was a pilot in World War II, then went on to believe he did commercial piloting, and then he went on to work for the police. And that's kind of he got into writing and ultimately came up with his idea of creating a western but in space.
Yeah. And he had already done some other shows as well, wasn't I believe the Lieutenant,
Right.
this, military type show that he had written. Yeah.
This I still remember like a lot of this stuff kind of going through like this is a story that has probably been told umpteen million times, but this of course is just our flavor of this particular episode. Um the thing is that that's the nature of television. You tend to work with certain people, you tend
Mhm.
to do certain things, because in the end, while we all like to think that it's all about the art and the craft, mostly it's about the paycheck. And that's what he did. He wrote scripts and whatnot for different shows, effectively trying to uh, start his career in television, and eventually he got to the point where he wanted to write something he would do himself. And I still remember, like most people don't realize. I'm sure any diehard Trekkie or Trekker knows this little factoid, but we often refer to Lucille Ball as the godmother of Star Trek, because when Gene was shopping his pilot around, nobody wanted to make it. Yeah, producers passed on it, studios passed on it, and it was Lucille Ball who believed in the idea, and she funded the pilot through Desilu Studios. So, and
Mhm.
if you go back and you look at the original, like the original series, like for the first um, like the first couple of, I'm not sure how many episodes it was, but there was like an opening bumper of sorts for Desilu Studios.
I remember that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, had something pop up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, obviously we know that this wasn't the pilot that hit TV first. Yeah, but we'll get into that later. So, a couple things before you get into the summary of this. First of all, every episode pretty much has had its space shots remastered so that they're at least somewhat up to standards of 90 CG, which
Yeah.
they look good. And to be fair, some of the original effects were rough. Well,
Yes.
so yeah. I mean, let's put it this way. I think Lars and I could do better effects than they could in the 60s.
What
And
do you?
Oh God, yes.
that's
Yeah,
not even trying.
yeah. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll try to cover that. I'm also going to do this. As I go through this, I'm going to try not to I'm going to try to view it as though this is the first time I ever watched this, and I know nothing about these characters. Although eventually that'll break down once they start naming them. Although I think it's like halfway through before you even get Spock's name. So
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
so
I know that when when they shot this as a pilot, again, most people who watched Star Trek when it aired saw most of this as kind of flashbacks in a two-part episode, The Menagerie.
yep.
They didn't like the pilot. They said it was too cerebral, and it was so funny. The producers were like, "Get rid of the dude with the ears.
Yeah, get rid of the devil.
Yeah, get
And
rid of him. He's
also the
boring.
woman first officer.
Yeah, he's boring. Get rid of him." And they had some other criticisms of the show, and I think if you watch this and then you go back and watch the first pilot that actually aired, where you had William Shatner and a crew, you can kind of see where they did take some of the things the producers asked and put them into place.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's the thing about I remember distinctly reading the book I Am Spock, which was Leonard Nimoy's autobiography, second autobiography, if you could believe, because
After
the
I
first,
am not Spock.
yeah, because of course he wanted to separate himself from the persona for many years, because he was typecast after Star Trek, and he was like, no, and I want to do something other. I want to do other things. And long story short, he went back, kind of like Shatner did, embraced the role, realized, hey, this is forever gonna be associated with me. So he went back and kind of retold the story from that perspective. And one of the things he talked about was when he created the persona for the character of Spock, um, he set out to portray that character effectively the opposite of whatever the other lead was going to be. So
We're making fun of that in the
yeah,
summary. So
yeah, so you know, Jeffrey Hunter's Pike was very cool, calm, collected,
Mhm.
stoic, almost emotionless to a certain degree. So that's why we see in the cage, when they get down to the planet, you see Spock actually break a smile. Um, and that was just because, again, he was kind of giving that play off of Pike's emotionlessness for.
yeah,
And then, of course, when they brought in William Shatner to play Kirk, and Kirk was this basically swashbuckler in space, he
Mhm.
I am overwhelmed with emotion, and I'm played by an asshole.
he's, every time somebody does a Kirk impression like that, I always think of the clip from Family Guy when Kirk is sitting in the captain's chair and he's changing his entire pose, and,
Yeah.
and it gets increasingly absurd.
Yeah. Um,
Well, it's Shatner.
Hmm.
but yeah, no, yeah, I mean, you're right, and that was again, that was one of the changes that they made. Jeffrey Hunter's character was too cerebral. He was too calm. He wasn't much of an action character, and there's a whole scene
He
we'll
wasn't sexy
get to
enough.
this when we do it. There's a whole scene where he's like he wants to quit. He's like, I'm
Oh, yeah.
tired of this. I don't want to make these decisions anymore. I'm going to go be a farmer or whatever. And the doctor's like talking him out of it. So then they bring in a new character, Captain Kirk, is just like, man, I mean, this guy is like, he's an action hero. Totally nothing bothers him. There's never, ever any time where he's like, yeah, I want to quit this job. So they really changed up that character a lot. So yeah, then they had to change Spock to go along with it.
I'm I'm
Okay.
I'm entirely. I know you're gonna do the summary
Summary.
here. I just want to say one thing. I think the reason I think Kirk, the character of Captain Kirk, is the only real reason why the Prime Directive really exists.
So he doesn't bone every alien there is.
Exactly. I mean,
Well, he
the
still
reason
does.
why there's no money in the Federation is because they spent it all on child support.
Yeah. And replacing shirts every time he rips one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Assuming this becomes a regular thing where we're doing retro reviews, the Kirk shirt rip is going to be one of those things we watch. Although right now this episode is going to be sexism watch, but we'll get there. So the pilot opens with truncated version of the theme that we'll get to know and love as we zoom on the bridge in what, if I remember the original shot, it obviously looked like 60s effects, but it was this cool thing where we zoom in on the bridge on the
Mhm.
top. The remastered version, they make it look even better to where it feels almost like it feels almost like it's a good continuous shot. Almost.
Yeah. I know that was like the most expensive, difficult part of that to pull off.
Yeah. So the crew, still unidentified, are trying to figure out something they're detecting in front of them that they can't see. And after some tension, it's a radio wave, an old one from the SS Columbia in the Talos star system. And the fourth planet is apparently Class M, and they explain what Class M is, because you gotta. Because we've never heard of Class M planets or Talos star system or any of this. So pretty standard setup based on what we came to know as Star Trek is here's your thing, go investigate it. But the captain says, f him. And he goes to his quarters to make a captain's log. Okay, yeah, this is my first shit joke. So he calls it Dr. Boyce to his quarters. The doc brings drinks. And apparently, Pike's lamenting over some dead people. I'm sorry, the captain, we don't know his name yet. I think we heard Chris. There's some dead people from his last mission. He's kind of sick of it and wants to quit and either go be an Orion trader or something involving his horses. Oh yeah, and why? And the most important, here's where sexism kicks in big time. Orion animal slave women.
That was
I'm just gonna
Dr.
facepalm
Boyce.
this.
Yeah, it was a Dr. Boyce line, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I just want to say, like, that's something. If there was any way that you could make Dr. McCoy any better, would have been if he had carried on that tradition of bringing the captain a drink when he came
He,
to.
he's done it a couple of times, but yeah, it wasn't something that happened very often.
Yeah, I like that. I like the line from the cage. Is that ice you're putting in there? Who wants a warm martini? It's like,
Yeah, McCoy's line is he brings him something, and I think Kirk's like, I'm not interested in eating. He said, this is not chicken soup. And he comes up and it's 2 glasses of whiskey.
Okay. So, the unknown person that we'll eventually know as Spock calls and says there are survivors according to a follow-up message. So off they go, and they're doing the time warp, Factor 7. Just not again, because this is the pilot.
Yeah.
So we get a musical montage and starship porn. Ooh. They're flying through space at warp factor 7. Oh, yeah. They're going real fast.
you know,
Oh,
when you just did that, I swear I heard in my head, Star Trekking across the
Across the universe. Yeah.
uh,
Oh man, okay, I promise I'll stop
so
singing.
in
Man,
walks some new yeoman who, of course, the captain who captain yells at because she's a woman. Ew. And he's not used to a woman on the bridge. And he says this to number one, who also happens to be a woman.
Yeah, but
I
then
th-
he says it does, he says it doesn't, she doesn't count.
yeah.
So, like, what
I
is
think
that
this is
supposed to
probably
mean?
cringe. I think this is probably cringy in the 60s.
Well, you've got people born in the 30s writing scripts for a TV show in the 60s that we're watching in the 2020s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
big
think it was
disconnect.
cringy. I was thinking it was cringy back then. I mean, now it's like, seriously, we're just laughing at it now because we know it's going to be so bad.
Yeah, I mean, but imagine Strange New Worlds going back and recreating the episode The Cage, like shot for shot. Imagine how bad that would look with Anson Mount trying to pull off those lines. I mean,
Mhm.
But it looked better because Anson Mount's hair.
well, of course, but the point is that, look, when you look at, like, so you can see her on the screen, you can see what Jeffrey Hunter looked like as Pike. I mean, the guy,
I'm straight laced and perfectly normal for the 60s.
you could set your watch to that guy's hair, okay? I mean, come on. The He was as straight and arrow as they came. He There was no questioning what type of personality he had. I'm not in no way, shape, or form am I excusing it or saying that, "Oh, you just had to be there." It was the way of the times. It was still very sexist, but at the same time, it's just,
Surprising women aren't getting patted on the ass on this one, to
yeah.
be fair.
It's to be Yeah. I mean, like, seriously, I was. I mean, when I watch this, I'm surprised. Really, he doesn't swat the yeoman on the butt as
Yeah.
she walked past him.
Nothing says good job like a firm, open-handed swat on the butt.
Woohoo!
Um, but the ironic part here, seriously, is that was actually meant to not be sexist. Seriously, by him saying, "I'm not used to women on the bridge," was their way of saying, without a lot of exposition, that women were joining the fleet, that it was becoming more integrated with women. It's like, okay, I get the idea. You really botched how you did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't work.
It did
And
not work.
nowadays, yeah, it's facepalm time. Okay, so when the ship makes it to the planet, we get some good techno babble about the conditions below, and the manly men, of course, go off to landing duty. And we get the first use of the transporter.
And the ugliest field jackets
Ooh.
I've ever seen.
Oh man, those gray ones.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
just look like a bag.
Yeah.
yeah, it is what it is. And they beam down to our first shot of the soundstage slash matte painting that is in every alien planet for the remainder of the series, pretty
And
much.
that background noise that, I mean,
Yeah,
it's off-putting. Oh, I mean,
yeah,
it's like some sort of, I don't know, feedback that's going on,
yeah,
and you're just like, "The hell's
yeah.
that?"
Yeah, I was like, why does this planet sound like I'm standing under buzzing electrical lines?
Yeah. Like like, am I gonna get sterilized by being on this planet?
Yeah. They go and they find some weird sounding plants that they can hold and make them shut up. And that makes Spock smile.
Yeah.
Um,
And this was something we talked about,
yep.
beforehand.
Yep. Oh, don't worry. Spock's reactions are gonna be more entertaining, especially how we know the character develops from the next pilot onward.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Then we find the wreckage of the ship and some old dude survivors. And the captain introduces himself finally as Captain Christopher Pike of the United Spaceship Enterprise. Ooh. And then the woman, aka Vina, shows up, eyeing Pike as though he already got Anson Mount hair. Sadly, we've already discussed poor Jeffrey Hunter doesn't have this. Then we cut to big headed alien watching Pike's reaction, which can be summarized as "Boing."
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that, like, when all the landing party guys saw Vina, like, I mean, I would not have been surprised if they'd cut to like a cartoon kind of, the eyes bulging out like and them doing, exaggerated wolf whistles
Yeah.
because
Well, if the outfit she had on for the time,
it
that
was
was
pretty
pretty
provocative.
racy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty provocative.
And we
Yeah.
haven't even got to Janice Rand's suggestion of, hey, let's go mini skirts so short that we have to shave.
Uh,
Okay.
all right then.
So Captain starts talking to the ship with the flip communicator, the first use of this. But they're interrupted by Vina, who, after checking Pike out like cattle, tells him he's a prime specimen. Um, and after the old guys try to convince him she's just kind of weird, um, she apparently is wants to show Pike their secret, or she's just GTF. I'm not sure which. Probably both, actually, knowing how this goes. So she takes Pike off, and then suddenly she and the survivors disappear, and Pike gets grabbed by the big brain dudes who pull in behind them, their obvious prop door, just in time for the landing party to start showing up and blasting the door. It's totally ineffective. And then Spock channels his Akbar with a classic, "There are no survivors, it's a trap!"
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
So Pike wakes up in a cell with walls, part of which look like they're either rock or plastic bags, and a nice full-size window. He sees some other cells and some monsters in them, and then the brain dudes show up. They telepathically treat him like he's a specimen while he does whatever they say he's going to do, like they're all reading off of the script. And then they say they're going to start experiments. Back on the ship, meanwhile, they discuss the fact they're up against alien illusionists. Only number one, who's in command, agrees with the plan to blast the door on the planet with the ship's power. You hear that, turnabout intruder? A woman in command! Seriously.
Fun fact, I don't know how many people know this, but the Talosians
Yeah.
were actually played by women.
Women, yeah.
Voiced by men, and the one has this weird pulsy thing on their head.
Yeah, it was meant to be like a blood vessel pulsing.
Yeah.
It was just effectively, it was like a little channel that was being inflated with air.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the time, again,
It works.
for the time, it was good effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were originally supposed to look like crab people, and they just couldn't pull it off. So this is kind of like where you get that first, long-standing Star Trek tradition of we just make their heads look different.
Oh my God, it would be
Yeah.
like a bunch of Zoidbergs trying to do the apology dance.
Hmm.
For those who are listening to this, I'm swaying back and forth on the camera with my hands mocking like
Doing crab hands. Okay. So meanwhile, Pike is examining his cell and not tearing at the blocks parts of his cell and not the paper bag part of the cell, as the Talosians decide to test him by making it protect someone. In pops Rigel 7, where apparently the shit that had gone down a couple weeks ago was, and Vina. She runs in, all panicked, and in walks Genarian the Barbarian, who makes odd growls. I mean, it's some bad 60s fighting later. Genarian knocks down Pike so he can have his way with the woman. This, of course, gives Pike a chance to kill him. They get mind-yeeted back to Pike's cell, where Avina just decides to come on to him, telling him to imagine her however he wants. Meanwhile, he's analyzing the bullshittery because apparently he doesn't have any feelings.
Nice.
And he does gather, though, that there may be a way to block them out of his mind.
Yeah.
So outside, number one is ordering the big laser to start blasting. It's totally ineffective, or it's all an illusion, the doctor points out. Meanwhile, Pike. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna make. I was just gonna make a Pokemon reference here.
Oh, come on! I've made a couple.
Enterprise uses ship's power. It's totally ineffective.
Yep. Meanwhile, back on back underground, Pike pumps Vina for information. She's disappointed, apparently. We find out that the Talosians are underground due to some war, which involved them then learning all their mineral powers, basically so they could jerk off to other beings' dreams and breed them. And the Talosians, of course, punish her for sharing this. So Pike continues probing the cell. They slip something in through a hidden door. It's a tiny protein shake, probably approved by X. And after some threats, they mentally chuck him into burning oatmeal. So after that, he drinks the blue jizz. Then he attacks the glass. Pike notes they can't read primitive thoughts. Of course, all they want to do is talk about getting Pike to bone Vina.
But so okay, I'm gonna stop you there real quick. Okay, they can't read primitive thoughts, but that's all they're obsessed with is getting him to give in to his primal urges. Like, I thought you like, are you guys
like to watch?
Yeah, like you're just voyeurs. I mean, like
Yeah.
like the Talosian Pornhub. I mean, come on.
Because I mean, I can't remember this, but I mean, they never give a reason that they want them to do that. It's not like they're trying to have them populate the planet with, their offspring. It's just like they just want them to do it.
Well,
No,
yeah,
they
it's
ultimately they do want them to populate the planet, or they all die.
yeah, because they can't.
Spoiler alert:
Oh,
They
that's
can't.
right. They can't do it. Okay.
So,
they forgot how to bone.
and again,
So
I mean, like they wanted, like, do you want me to just show you how to do it? I mean, look here, let me get my phone real quick. Like let me go. We can like hook up the ship to the ship's computer, and like now there's like gigs. At this point, there's probably teraflops worth of information, from across the galaxy of adult material. Like, come on, man, this is it's like the episode of the Orville in the first season um
Hmm.
when they sorry when they get when Ed and
Ed and Kelly get put in a zoo.
yeah get put in a zoo. It's like they effectively uh negotiate their release by giving them access to reality TV.
Yeah.
It's like we got tons of it. But
they
again,
didn't have that in the '60s, though. So
yeah, I understand. Like back then, you really do have to put yourself in the mindset of what it was like to live in the 1960s, because they were trying to show a future of that was far beyond what we had experienced as humans so far, but you still had to tell it in relatable terms. So that's
where women
why.
were just joining the fleet.
Yep.
Okay, off to the next illusion. We get a couple horses. We get some trees and bushes. We get the good old astroturf and a pretty matte painting in the background. I'm sensing a theme here. More discussion on how the Talosians do their illusions. Vina pretends they're having a picnic. Instead, Pike presses on, and of course, the Talosians are still watching on the weird-shaped TV. What is with these TVs? I see this every time we get a really alien species. Their TVs are all these janky, weird things.
It's because
Why not round, square, rectangle? So
they didn't have a Sony or a Magnavox or anything like that. So they didn't realize the value and the benefit of a good 4x3 picture at that point.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think honestly, it's just a way to differentiate on the screen. When it looks like a rock with a screen in it, alien TV. When it looks like an actual TV, human TV.
yeah. I think they did that. They did that decades later on B5 with the Vorlons too. So it's like, what the shit?
Can you imagine? Like, it would piss off the people who have to make content for these people. Like they can't, like you. Could you imagine like this?
Imagine the porn. Oh no, the
The
jagged TV's
shipments.
covering up the money shot. Ah!
I wasn't going to go there, but of course,
I just
you were.
okay. Oh no, we got to cut to another illusion. This time with Pike, the Orion trader, and a couple creepy Starfleet guys, and the dancing Orion anal slave woman played by Vina. Okay, let's just double face palm this one.
You know, we sit there and we kind of we talk about things like this from a more socially evolved sense of um or perspective, but realistically, I think that I think again, if they were to do a shot for shot recreation today using the Strange New Worlds cast, I still think that a lot of the stories, concepts of this episode of this pilot still hold very true. There's still a almost misogynist look upon females. So the fact that they were trying to show Pike from this hedonistic, misogynist view, when as a an Orion slave trader, I still think that they would try to portray that in the same exact light as they did back then. And it's just because, despite the fact that socially we have moved forward quite a bit in the last 60 years, um,
and
it,
back in the last
it
few.
it's
Yeah.
still very prevalent, and so I still think they would do it the same way.
Yeah. To be fair, the scene is too sexist for even Pike, and he leaves only for the Orion animal slave woman Vina to follow. Okay, so back on the ship, landing party this time is planning to beam into the Talosian base, but the Talosians only take the women. Spock is almost panicked. Of course, the women end up in a cell with Pike and Vina. None of their equipment works, of course. Vina's bitching because she wants to be the woman. Pike decides to go ultra violence, of course. So meanwhile, the Talosians list off the advantages of porking the subordinates. Roddenberry special.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Also,
Like Roddenberry has the same I guess tendency to write that type of material as much as George Lucas had the tendency to write garbage for dialogue.
Yeah.
Also, of course, Horny Yeoman and Number One both have fantasies about being able to tap the cap. So after getting tired of Pike threatening, the Talosian goes full fascist, mind punishing Pike for wrong think and offering rewards for right think. Yay! It's 2025, apparently. No. Complete side note, what's with the stupid magical chimes on the doors? I mean, the ring? What the hell is that?
Just to
Just,
make it seem alien. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I have no idea. Spock gets to the bridge and decides to GTFO, but everything shuts down. Spock is hysterical. Back in the cell, the Talosian tries to grab the hand lasers through the secret door, but Pike jumps up, grabs him, starts throttling it. Even the illusion of a Hollywood monster doesn't stop him from choking the Talosian down. Meanwhile, on the ship, Spock is angry and upset because nothing is working. Then the Talosians finally start a computer dump of Earth history. Yay.
Finally, after all this time, oh, you guys don't like to be held captive, do you?
I should have done this first.
Yep,
Yeah.
we're getting there. So, meanwhile, Pike shoots the glass with the empty lasers because why not? And then it threatens to shoot the Talosian in the head. Suddenly, poof, there's the hole in the glass. And they, of course, escape to the surface. The Talosian tries to bluff Pike and says, "You can't get, this is where we wanted you. Yeah, that's it. Sure." Pike tries to barter, and Number One just sets the laser to go boom because, yeah, I'm done with this shit.
Yeah.
Click. We're dead now, bitch.
Yeah. Now the thing is, see how long it took. It took Number One to get from there, like from the beginning of being beamed in there to where she's like, "Screw it, I'm done with this." Okay, Pike did this whole thing about I'm going to learn what it takes to block their thoughts. And she's just like, let's screw it.
Let's just blow shit up.
Yeah, I mean, come on, that should be a prime indicator that the women in this case were much more effective than the men.
I should have started calling them females. That would have made it more sexist sounding.
Oh yes. Okay.
So at this point, the other Talosians show up and they give up because apparently humans are too damn violent when they're held in captivity, even if it's pleasant. Also, they share, "Oh yeah, we wanted this to work because otherwise we're going to die." Sad. So the women start beaming back, but the captain doesn't. Spock looks like he might cry without the captain there. On the planet, we find out Vina is all gimped up and ugly because the Talosians are apparently bad at building people.
Yeah.
So she can't come to the back of the ship because she's all ugly and misshapen. And Starfleet would never accept. Starfleet and the Federation would never accept somebody that ugly.
Well, I mean, they did let Leonard Nimoy on the ship. I mean, come on.
Ugh. So that's all sad. So after some additional talking, they let Pike go, but they say we'll give her looks back, and they give Vina her and an illusion Pike to bank. She looks at the real Pike, looks at illusion Pike, and says, "Eh."
Yeah, whatever. See ya.
So they beam Pike, the Talosians beam Pike back up. I'm surprised Spock doesn't give him a hug at this point, but he does. But the captain does manage to yell at the at Horny Yeoman again, although she does. Especially then, of course, she asks him who his poon pick would have been between her and Vina and Number One.
Well, you know the funny thing is that I found out years later that yeoman actually had a name in the script, but they never refer to her. I think it was
Yeah. They never bothered to give her one. Yeah.
it was Yeoman Colt, I believe. So
Good for breeding.
yeah, and she had
Anyway,
unusually strong female drives.
oh,
Really,
ah,
really,
oh,
Really, really.
yeah. I mean,
like I said, horny yeoman.
yeah. Like, come on, man. Like, seriously.
Dude, she's young and DTF, just like poor gipped up Vina. So then Pike gets his military on and shouts some crap, and they take off. And of course, we get more shipboard. We get the music and more shipboard. The end. Da, 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 da. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not a bad show. It's not a bad episode. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, a lot of the pieces were there
Yeah,
that you could see would develop into, a better series.
especially Spock's emotional
Yeah,
nature.
Spock's character undergoes a pretty significant change because, there's no reference in here to him supposedly being without emotion. That doesn't come up until later. But I think, for me, the biggest change again is like somebody looked at this and they said, "We need a better captain. You've got to have somebody that's more entertaining." Because if you compare the two, you've got Pike. He's brooding. He's introspective. His leadership style is like he's very burdened, by this idea of command, even to the point where he's thinking about quitting. He's very cautious. He's almost to the point of being just like melancholy. He's just like, why would anybody follow this dude? Then you get Captain Kirk, and he's like a complete opposite. He's very charismatic. He's energetic. He's bold. He's decisive. He's friendly. He's uh, really likes his job. He's confident about it. Uh,
So much that he wants every scene to focus on him and him alone.
exactly right. But
Maybe
it is
that's
a
Shatner.
but
Anyway,
it's a very different character, and you got to admit it worked
yep.
because I couldn't have watched 3 seasons of moody Captain Pike.
Maybe. To be fair, when Strange New World starts, Anson Mounts Pike is pretty much doing the same thing, except he's sitting in Montana and brooding even more
Yeah, but that's. I mean,
after Discovery
Yeah,
season 2.
yeah.
he's
There was
got a reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, he's still getting over that. He's still haunted by the Captain Melty Face vision. So
hmm
Yeah, but yeah, the, but like you said, this was a it was a good idea that showed what Star Trek could be. It just didn't have the formula exactly right, and they tweaked the formula as they went on to additional ones, and they were able to take this unaired pilot, which apparently, I guess, at early Star Trek conventions they aired this pilot, if I remember correctly.
They did, yeah.
But they took it and turned it into the Menagerie, the two-parter.
hmm
well, I mean, they
Which
had they had all this footage. They had this what they considered decent footage in the can. They wanted to do something with it, so they
Yeah,
found a way to repurpose it inside of another story.
yeah. Just I thought that was actually pretty clever. It's like you've got all this, you put all this money into this pilot you never showed. Let's get something out of it. We can
yeah,
take 2 episodes and 80% of it will be something that we've already filmed.
and we could take the character and it gives them a reason to go back to Talos
hmm
and drop him off because he has a backstory.
Yeah.
That's the
He's
one
all
thing.
gimped up. Let him go hang out with Gimp Girl.
That's one thing that really, really chapped my ass for season 2 of Discovery, and that was like we had established that Discovery was supposed to be in the prime timeline. So
Mhm.
the events that happened prior to that starting had to happen. So they'd been to Talos for the um, the general order that
Yeah.
forbade anybody from going in Talos for under penalty of death was there,
Mhm.
and they just went right there, like, oh, we think Spock's there. Let's go. Come on. Not even thinking twice about it. Like, guys, you suck. Like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
seriously. Uh,
There's a reason Discovery jumped to the 31st century after 2 seasons because
yeah.
just chunking up the timeline.
Yeah. I mean, they really needed to do that. And to be fair, it actually, in terms of the show itself, it really gave it a shot in the arm that it needed to get through till the end.
To give 3 more times for Michael Burnham to save the galaxy.
Exactly. But you know, like they set some great things in motion with this episode.
did.
With the pilot, they set the precedence for there being a death penalty on the books for the Federation. They of course they set
Not with this episode, but with the menagerie.
right, but they gave themselves they gave themselves something they could use later. You know, they didn't plan to. I mean, obviously this was supposed to be the pilot of the series going forward, and with Jeffrey Hunter playing that role in perpetuity, but it didn't work that way. But they still ended up with something that they could use to mold it. Because the other thing is, and you know, most people don't realize that um, this was a when they used this for the menagerie, that was a wonderful way to set up and explain why Spock was so loyal to Pike. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, because Spock had been around since before Kirk, and you know, I mean, of course they were friends, but Spock really had a deep seated loyalty for Pike, and his actions in the menagerie show that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Or
I
he was,
mean, he's
or
put
he
he
was bi and he was really and he was just really attracted to Pike.
Hey, you know,
I could see it when you get Anson Mount hair on there. Yeah, I can definitely just. Anyway,
yeah. But yes,
okay.
it was. You could see, how this, it did, to your point, put a lot of the bones of the newer show in place. They changed the things they felt they needed to. They kept the things they wanted to. Little tweaks here and there, like even the model, of the ship. The Pike version of the Enterprise looks a little different than what you saw later.
Although I don't
Bridge,
remember that, though I don't remember it that well because obviously they 90s CG'd over everything.
right. The first model had the bridge was much more bulbous. You had these little pointy things sticking off the nacelles. They had the grills on the back and not the little balls. It wasn't much, but they felt like it looked a little clunky, so they rebuilt it. And then they did it again. Just they changed it again after the second pilot. But it's still, it's a good show, and I am always kind of wondering how would this have gone, and would it have the cult following that it does, and have so many spin-offs and movies and everything if they had kept going with this cast? And I'm going to say no. I don't think it would have.
Yeah, Spock alone wouldn't have worked the way he was being played in this episode. That was the big thing. Spock really was the big character, was the person that people really were interested
Mhm.
in because of how he was portrayed.
Yeah. And I think, if you're
And
looking back
Kirk
on the
doing
original
this.
show, you have that, you've got that triad of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. That really worked. You wouldn't have that here. I don't think. I don't think you would have that here. So yeah,
Yeah, I don't think you would have seen the same level of camaraderie between
no,
Spock, Pike, and Boyce.
no.
Or Spock or Pike, Boyce, and number one.
Yeah, that too.
Mhm,
Yeah, because that was
Technically, she was the first officer and not Spock in this case.
mhm.
right. But again, you know, that's funny because the way Majel Barrett played number one in this episode was very much like how Nimoy went on to portray Spock, very cold, very calculated, very logical.
Except, okay, so they both want to bone the captain. Fair enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, to be honest with you, without this pilot failing, we would not have been blessed with the concept that
Yeah.
fans know as Spurk.
Yeah, kind of failing. Let's be fair. The cage was not the pilot that launched the show. It's the pilot that launched the idea for the show, so that when they did get a pilot that didn't suck, we had the show.
Yeah,
Fair,
So,
fair.
yeah.
so I think we could say that's how Star Trek began. So, did we get this one right, or is there more to discuss? And also, would you like to see more retro reviews? Because we got 6 more dozen episodes of those old scientists doing what they do best. So, Might have to go there. So thank you for joining us here on Treknicity, where we do the deep dive on all things Star Trek, especially sexy things. All things in the Star Trek multiverse. I'm your host, Patrick Murray, and with me are my co-hosts, Mike Raper and our Lars descendants, who truly hate me right now.
Just not right now. Not just
I was
right
going
now.
to say, it's just not right now. It's
Fair enough. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Treknicity.com, as well as visiting us on all of our socials listed here. If Lars can actually get the slide to pop up, or find us on your favorite podcast services such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. If you have any ideas for future episodes subjects, please feel free to drop a comment in the video below or hit us up on any of our socials. And as always, rock out with your Spock out. See you next time.
I'm the uninfected guy that you won't forget your favorite letter.